Hi, in this tutorial we are going to solve a question related to naming of carboxylic acid derivatives. Let's look at the question. It asks us give IUPAC names for the following molecules. Let's start from the first one. Let's label them so we can write their names. So the first one here is, let's look at the functional groups. We have a phenyl ring here. We have here a carbonyl part, and we have a nitrogen here. So basically this part is an amide functionality. So let's write here, this is an amide. Okay, what's the rule for amides? How we name them? Basically you have to say the parent name alkane, then E will drop and we will add amide. So let's look at here. So this is the if we think this is a carboxylic acid, let's just label here as an OH. If this were a carboxylic acid, how are we going to name it? It's benzoic acid. So instead of oic acid, we are going to say amide. So this is benzamide. Let's write here benzamide. And let's look at what substituents we have. On the phenyl ring here, let's number it. So we can say this is number 1 for the amide functionality on the phenyl ring. This is 2 and 3. In the third position, we have a methyl. And here we have a methyl, but methyl is on the nitrogen of amide. So how we are going to report it? This is going to be N-methyl. And if we want to use numbers for the ring, it's going to be 3-methyl. So instead of like repeating methyl 2 times, we can say this N, referring the position of methyl on the amide nitrogen, and 3, we have to use a comma, 3. Then we have to say we have 2-methyl, so it's dimethyl benzamide. So N, 3 dash dimethyl benzamide. That's the naming of the first compound. Let's look at the second molecule. Second molecule is a carboxylic acid derivative, which is an acid halide, an acid chloride. So think that this is a carboxylic acid instead of chlorine here. If we have OH, so what's going to be the name? So let's count the longest chain, including the carbonyl carbon. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 long carbon chain. So this is a pentane, but if it is a carboxylic acid, it is pentanoic acid. And what's the rule for the acid halides? The rule says that instead of oic acid, we have to say oil halide. In this case, it's oil chloride. So let's write here. We have to write 5. I'm going to write here pentane. E will drop. We will say oic acid. But since this is not a carboxylic acid, so we are going to say it's oil chloride, pentanoyl chloride. But when we look at the 5 carbon chain, we have carbon-carbon double bond functionality here, an alkene. So instead of pentane, it's going to be pentene. So let's just erase this part. It's going to be pentenoyl chloride. Pentenoyl chloride in. Okay, let's look at where is the location of double bond. It's 3. So you can use here 3-pentenoyl chloride, or according to new system, you can say 3 just before the alkene suffix here. We say pent 3-enoyl chloride. So I will use the new naming system. But we have here also a substituent. I'm going to circle it. So it's methyl. That's the thing we have to say. Number 2, we have to say what is the stereochemistry of double bond alkene. Let's look at. So when we look at here, on this carbon, we have a methyl group and here we have a hydrogen. So this methyl group has high priority over this hydrogen, so let's say high priority. And if you look at the other carbon on the double bond, it has two substituent, methyl and this part. This part definitely has higher priority, let's say, over the methyl one. High priority groups are on the opposite side of the double bond. So this is an E alkene. So higher higher functionalities or high priority groups are on the opposite sides of the double bond, so it's an E. So where is the location? 3. So let's write here. We have to start saying the location of the double bond and its stereochemistry. So 3E. Sometimes people don't write 3 because we have to say the 3 for alkene when we are saying the whole name. So it's a choice basically, but I will keep it. I will say 3E. These numbers are especially useful when you have more than one double bond. So you can specify, for example, if you have a double bond here and double bond here, I'm just giving an example, you have to say their numbers, so it will distinguish which one is E and which one is Z. But here in this case we have just one double bond, so it's your choice basically to use number or not. So 3E, then we have to say the location of the substituent. 3, we have to start with capital letter, methyl pentenoyl chloride. Pent, I will say 3 because that's the location of double bond, then the suffix for the functional group in oil chloride. You have to put a space between oil and chloride. So that's the naming of the second molecule. Let's move to the third molecule. Let's look at what kind of carboxylic acid derivative it is. So we have here a carbonyl part, an oxygen, and here we have an alkyl group. So this is an ester. So let's say this is an ester. Okay, so what is the name? How do we name esters? Basically, let's think that again, this is a carboxylic acid. How are we going to name it? Let's say this is OH. So we have, let's number the carbons. The carbonyl carbon has to be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. Four long carbon chain. So this is a butane. But if it is a carboxylic acid, we have to say this is butanoic acid. So let's write here. It's a butane. E will drop. We will say butanoic acid. But this is an ester. How do we name esters? Instead of oic acid, we say O8. So basically, ic acid, this part, is going to be replaced by 8 suffix. So butanoate. But when we have esters, we have to say first the alkyl groups on the oxygen. So let's look at this. It has 4 carbon. It's a T-butyl. So let's write the name here. We have to say first, I'm going to write it here. This is a T-butyl. Then I have to say the ester naming. This is 2-butyl. We have a substituent on 3, so T-butyl space 3-bromo butanoate. Let's write here. I'm going to move this one over here so I can have space. Bromo butanoate. So that's the naming of this ester molecule. Let's move to the next molecule. Let's say this is number 4. Number 4 is also an ester. So this part is the alkyl, which is ethyl. And let's look at this carbonyl part. So when we look at here, let's name this part as a carboxylic acid. This is cyclohexane carboxylic acid. So when we have carboxylic acids, carboxylic acid functionality next to a ring immediately, we don't say oic acid, but we say cycloalkane carboxylic space acid. So this is, let's write, I will write here the name, cyclohexane carboxylic acid. So when you have esters, instead of saying carboxylic acid, we will say carboxylate. So ic acid will be replaced by ate. Okay, so just let's erase this part. Basically, we have to say ate here, carboxylate. But we have to say first ethyl. So here I will write, let me just move a little bit this part. Then let's write here, we have to start with capital letter, ethyl cyclohexane carboxylate. Let's look at the last molecule, which is going to be number 5. I'm going to write just over it. So let's look at here. We have here a carboxylic acid derivatives, but it has two components. We have here a carbonyl and carbonyl. These two carbonyls are connected with oxygen, and these parts are alkyl, different alkyl group. So this is an anhydride, but it's an asymmetric anhydride. This part and that part is different. How we name anhydride? Basically, instead of saying oic acid, we say oic anhydride. But when we have an asymmetric anhydride, we have to say oic this part, as like they are carboxylic acids but linked together with oxygen. We have to say, instead of acid, carboxylic acids acid, instead of that we have to say anhydride. Let's look at here. We have to go also alphabetically. We have here, I'm going to count the numbers on the carbon, this part, 1 2 3. This is propane. Here 1 2 3 4 5. This is pentane, propane. Basically we have to say pentane first. So this is pentanoic. Let's write the name. I will write with the red marker. Pentane. Instead of E, we will say oic. Then we have to say the same for this part. This is propane. E will drop, propanoic. Instead of acid, this is anhydride. We have to say anhydride. Okay, we finished the naming of 5 carboxylic acid derivatives in this tutorial. Thank you so much for listening.